Welcome to The Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a show that is a central hub and safe space for authors to share their stories. The Bold Book with Dr. Denise begins now.
Welcome to the Bold Book of the Day podcast. This conversation is for anyone looking for inspiration. Today's guest has spent years pulling back the curtain on some of the most powerful institutions in America. Big tech, the pharmaceutical industry, government agencies, and the media. His books have sold more than 750,000 copies. That's amazing. He has been featured in Fox News, on Forbes, and he's built a reputation that as one of the most fearless corruption fighters writing today. But today, we're not talking about nonfiction. Today, we're talking about a novel that is so wild, so clever, and uncomfortably plausible. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Kent Heckenlively.
Thanks so much for having me, Denise.
Please tell us about your new book, This Never Happened.
So, my new book, This Never Happened, A Call Girl in D.C., is a fictionalized version of the Watergate scandal. Yes, I write a lot of books about corruption, and one of the challenges that I often have in writing those books is in a nonfiction book, I have to verify everything. And I'm a really big stickler for that. So if I'm making some claim, I'm going to give you the source for that claim. So that's why my books usually have between 400 to 500 references in them. But then I run across stories that I can't verify, but they sound true.
And they're good.
Yeah, and they're fun.
Yes.
And I thought to myself, so when I had done a recent book, Twilight of the Shadow Government, which I co-wrote with a former CIA officer who turned whistleblower, I had to take another look at the Watergate scandal. Now, the Watergate scandal was kind of near and dear to my heart because I look at the Watergate scandal as sort of my political awakening. So that was 1973, 1974. I was like 9 or 10 years old at that time. And my family always had the news on. So, you know, we had the Watergate hearings on at our house and everything, and we'd talk about it. And I thought I knew the story. And then when I was doing the CIA book, I had to take another look at it. And I kept running across anomalies, things that I didn't understand. Now,
Right.
I know how people can be underhanded because that's what I often write about in my books, but it's got to make some logical sense. And so I ran across this one fact in the Watergate story that I thought I could spin into a book. And here's the fact. When the burglars went in the first time, they put in 2 wiretaps on phones. The first wiretap was for the head of the Democratic National Committee. And I'm saying to myself, oh, that makes a lot of sense because if you are going up against these people, you want the head guy, right? The second bug was on a secretary's phone. And I was saying to myself, why the heck are you bugging a secretary's phone? And then I fell down into a rabbit hole. And that rabbit hole was that this secretary was accused by some of the Watergate burglars of being part of a call girl ring run out of the Democratic National Committee. As I dug deeper into this, I found out that this supposed call girl ring had been set up by the CIA and that a number of books had been written about this. And it was really interesting because what happened was G. Gordon Liddy, who was one of the Watergate burglars, very publicly made these accusations. And the secretary at the center of it sued him for libel, and she lost twice in
What?
court. And you know, you find out that what happened is that a number of researchers, a number of reporters were actually reporting on this alleged call girl ring, and a federal judge put a gag order on them for 10 years. And I thought to myself, oh, this looks good.
Something
This
there.
is sexy. And so, I go and I find that, the alleged madam of this call girl ring had a book written about her. And so I take those real facts, but I can't prove them, right? And also, the alleged madam of this call girl ring was the roommate of the woman who becomes the second wife of the Attorney General of the United States, John Dean. And there were allegations that Maureen Dean worked for this call girl agency. And maybe what they were looking for in that second break-in of the Democratic National Headquarters is the secretary supposedly had a binder of girls and for the Democrats to see, and what they were looking for is the naked pictures of the Attorney General's wife. And I'm like, oh my God, as much as I say the Watergate scandal was sort of like my political awakening, I am aware of the fact that to many people, it's kind of a story of gray men, right? And I'm thinking like, oh man, I got a different angle on this. How about I take it from the perspective of a call girl who gets roped into doing this? She's got no interest in politics, but can I use her as the literary device to go through a bunch of the crazy stuff that was going on in the 1970s, where you got politicians, you got spooks. The question is, how much was the mob involved? Because the Nixon administration had commuted the sentence of Jimmy Hoffa, who was working with the mob using union money. And I just thought, oh my God, this is the opportunity. One of the writers I really love a lot is Elmore Leonard. And one of my favorite movies is Get Shorty, which is about a mobster who goes to Hollywood. And it's sort of like a story of small-time crooks confronting big-time crooks. And I thought, okay, this is the opportunity to make something sexy, fun, escapist. I don't have to worry about proving anything. All I have to do is have, something that I can hang it on, that I can say, well, I'm not saying this happened, but wink, wink, this never happened. But if you wanted to, in my acknowledgments, I'm like, I really have to give credit to a number of books that have been written in recent years. Chaos by Tom O'Neill about what the CIA was doing, as well as a number of other books taking another look at Watergate and asking the question, what was really going on? And so I thought, okay, let's have a fun, escapist story about politics. It's 50 years in the past. So, I jokingly say, a couple things as I'm trying to sell this book. And I say, this novel asks the age-old question, can a call girl enter politics and escape with her life and morals intact?
Oh, no wonder why Kirker's Review called this book entertainingly lurid.
Exactly. And so, the other joke is that, return to a simpler, more innocent time in American history when the intelligence agencies would only use adult women to compromise our public figures.
Wow. So how do you write materials that is provocative, like this one, and dark, while keeping it genuinely funny? Because it seems like it's shocking, but it's funny. How do you balance it?
Because my main character has absolutely zero interest in politics. She wants to make money. She's okay with power. And, she's looking at how people are dressed and, she's got to deal with these politicians. And so it's kind of funny that she's sort of an innocent in politics and she gets roped into doing this and she's got to figure her way through. And of course, her life gets threatened and she has to figure out how to escape from the bad guys. And that's kind of the story.
Well, the title also feels like a joke. This never happened. It feels like you are poking the bear. Why did you choose that title?
Because, as I said, when I write my nonfiction books, I am relentless in documenting everything. And so I'll run across stuff which sounds really interesting, but I just can't give it, I can't put it in a book because I think it lacks some credibility.
Yeah.
And with fiction, I don't have that problem. If, one thing in the story is true, then the audience is likely to go, it's all true. Yeah, it's all believable. Whereas if you get one thing wrong in nonfiction, then they don't believe anything you say.
Okay. So the name was intentional.
Oh, yeah. And in fact, what I'm planning to do is this is the first of a projected 4-volume series in which I'm going to do fictionalized versions of crazy stories that I've run across. And one of the things that's really sort of, I don't know if I should say terrifying, but I wrote this story going, okay, this is kind of a wild take on things. And as you start writing it, you're going, gosh, this makes a lot more sense than anything I've been told. This makes a lot more sense than, than what the mainstream media or history tells me. Because sometimes you read that history and you go, I don't understand this. This doesn't make any sense. But
do you think that
world it does?
Do you think that because it's fictional that you were letting yourself go somewhere that the nonfiction couldn't go?
Yeah, and another thing is when I'm writing my nonfiction stories, I'm usually working with whistleblowers. Mm-hmm. So these are like good, honest, and ethical people.
Yeah.
And I found myself going, okay, I've done 21 books with good, honest, ethical people. Let me go on the side of the bad guys. Let me have some fun by saying, like, what if I didn't care about morality? Or what if I had a completely different morality? And I'm trying to run the world. Would it be so much more delightful to be in the frame of mind of a crook than an honest person?
What do you think we can learn about ourselves when we look at a book of scandals compared to a book that is completely fictional, full of fun, provocative, and has a little bit of scandal? What can we learn about who we are?
Well, I think that most of us are just trying to get through our lives and, not get into trouble and things. And to some extent, I think one of the pleasures of, say, an Elmore Leonard book like Get Shorty is that the main character, Chili Palmer, just wants to make movies. Mm-hmm. And he's confronted with, what do I do to get a movie made? And who are these people I'm dealing with? And so you admire how persistent he is, and also kind of like how kind he is. And he's a lot nicer than a lot of these Hollywood people. He's a lot smarter than these Hollywood people.
Yeah.
And I think when you read a book like that, you're going, okay, intelligence and kindness matters. And yeah, he's a hood, but he's kind of a hood with a heart. And I think that my main character, Heidi, is like that because she has a lot of admirable qualities. She is looking at people, seeing who they really are, both
Yeah.
their strengths and their weaknesses.
Yeah.
Her job is to make sure people have a good time. Now, that's in the sexual realm, but one of the things that has consistently come out when people read this book is they go, this isn't like an erotic story. And and Heidi refers to herself as a courtesan, not a prostitute. And there's something different about that. It takes it to a little classier level. And so Heidi is always interested in looking her very best. She's interested in figuring out who people are. And, at the end of the day, she isn't worried about running the world in a way that, is negative. She's kind of like she describes herself as a hedonist, but, she lives according to what she calls the religion of the flesh, which means that anytime any ideology asks for physical pain or suffering to be inflicted on anybody, whether that's Christianity or capitalism, Nazism, communism, she's out of there. And so she's really a sensualist and a hedonist, but one who wants to live like a full life. And so I think that is sort of what she's seen. And when she's up against these politicians who are seeking to manipulate people in negative ways, she's like, well, wait a minute, this isn't right. And you see if she can change the course of history in a way that, is never going to get into the history books, but may benefit us all in certain ways.
Where did you get that character from? Like, who were you looking at to develop and create this person, this character?
Well, there's an allegation that there was a character very much like this, and she died sometime in the 1980s, and I just thought the way I set the book up is I set it up just like it's another one of my whistleblower stories. I happened to meet this person and they had a story, and so the literary device at the beginning of the story is how I came to run across this novel. And, I'm often working as a ghostwriter or fixing up somebody's story. So I just kind of set it up as, hey, I met this older woman who claimed she had some crazy story. And then, as it came close to publication time, she said, oh, I can't be associated with this. So she vanished, but she left me a letter saying, please publish this. This story needs to get out. And so it's sort of like the found manuscript literary device. And I just thought, oh, that's kind of fun because I am a whistleblower writer. So I'm just taking that same identity and putting it into a fictional world.
Now, I realize just by our conversation how you have gotten this intriguing accolade as the New York Times bestselling author. And I hear the strength just in your description, but I also hear that authoritative storytelling. And I also feel like that is from your experience as an attorney. How did you decide to take science teacher, attorney, and now to the next level of becoming a thriller writer?
Yeah, I think it's just sort of a natural evolution. I remember being in the fourth grade and writing stories that I was really intrigued by. When I was 14 years old, I had a big enough head that I sent off one of my science fiction stories to Analog Science Fiction magazine, the thing run by Isaac Asimov. So I've always loved writing stories. And I always talk about how the fact my dad was an attorney and my mom was a teacher, and I did both of my parents' professions. But I think I'm more of a teacher personality because your job as an attorney is really to ruin somebody's day.
Mm.
Because you're suing somebody and you're pointing the finger of blame at somebody. And I have been one of these people who's always liked to stand up and talk about things that I think are important. And so I think when I was younger, everybody's like, you'd be a great attorney. You'd be great in the courtroom. And I'm kind of like, yeah, but that's not quite my vibe. My vibe is let's talk about things. Let's figure out a better way to do things so that we can proceed on a better path, not to point the finger of judgment at somebody and say, I'm going to ruin your life. You're going to go away for 10 years, or you need to pay my client $1 million. I know there's a place for that and everything. I just ain't that person.
What surprised you the most about the writing process of or writing a thriller?
The writer Anne Lamott says that you shouldn't be concerned that you know everything in your story, that you should write every day as if you're on a dark road at night. It's misty, but your headlights illuminate a few feet in front of you. If you know what the next couple things are going to happen, just keep writing.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that gets me with writing fiction is how my characters eventually start to talk to me. And it really is as if the story is coming through me, not from me.
Yeah.
I just like set up characters and I give them a couple, character traits and everything. And it's just remarkable how like I'll be in writing chapter 3, and then they'll say to me, well, by chapter 6, I should do this. And I'm like, oh, wow, thank you for that. Or here's how this story is going to end. I'm like, oh, great, thanks.
I find that a lot of authors feel the same way. Like the characters at some point take on a life of their own and they start to guide the process of the writing, which is such a beautiful experience. As a writer, I've experienced it, but for up and coming authors that are worried about, oh my goodness, I can't figure it all out. I have this great idea. I really want to write, but I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know how it's going to end. You can have an idea of how it's going to end, but the characters will drive the story.
Yeah, and I belong to a writers group, and every Sunday we get together at Pete's Coffee and, various levels. And I see that with a lot of the younger writers, which is like, oh, gee, can I do 250 or 300 words today? And I'm like, no, you need to be doing 1,000 to 2,000 words a day.
Yes.
Okay? So, and I joke with them because they're like, how are you able to get that done? And I say, well, in my brain, I just say this: terrorists have taken my family hostage, and unless I do 1,000 words today, they're going to keep my family. So in order to rescue my family from the terrorists, I need to write 1,000 words. And they're like, really? That's what you say to yourself? That sounds kind of, that sounds terrible. I'm like, no, because I know terrorists haven't taken my family hostage. It's just sort of like a mental trick that I do to make sure I do the words. And, I've had the experience of like, oh my God, this book is so hard. I don't know how I'm going to finish it. And I'm just like, shut your mind off, do 1,000 words a day, come back to it in 3 weeks. Tell me, did you finish it? Did you figure it out? And it's like, lo and behold, if I just have that discipline of sitting my butt in the chair and writing those 1,000 to 2,000 words a day, it's amazing that I figure out a solution to it.
So many authors that I've come across, they have the dream of becoming a a New York Times bestseller or a best-selling author, but just to pick up on certain disciplines like sitting down to write is really hard for them. Do you have any advice for up and coming authors, budding authors who are interested in doing superbly well and writing something that is impactful and intriguing and becoming a best-selling New York Times best-selling author?
Yeah. So one of the people I really enjoy hearing talking about writing is Stephen King.
Mm-hmm.
And Stephen King says, look, anybody can become a writer if you will commit to writing 1,000,000 bad words, a
Ah,
million words that suck. And when I first heard that, that seemed overwhelming to me. But I thought, like, okay, well, let me just put that in my brain. If I do 1,000 words per day, and that's what I'm doing, well,
mm-hmm.
that's about 3 years. Okay, so 3 years is like a graduate degree, right?
Yes, I
And
was
and,
just about to say that.
and if you up it, if you make it 1,500 words a day, well, that's a year and a
A
half.
year and a half.
If you do 2,000 words a day, well, what's that? You're at 750,000 words in a year, and you'll probably get to it pretty quickly. And so you just got to think about it like a job. And, you know, 2 to 3 hours a day is all that my brain can handle to write.
Yeah.
But in that time, I can do 1,000 to 2,000 words.
That's why I always recommend that people have a daily habit of writing,
Yeah,
because it's a muscle. And
right.
as you do it, you're developing that muscle. And one of the ways to develop a writing muscle is to read.
Yeah. Yeah, and so
Yeah.
I'm always reading. I'm in 2 book clubs. And why
Yeah.
am I in the book clubs? Because they will pick books that I never would have picked. And that just gets me in a different frame of mind. It's also kind of funny because of the 2 book clubs I belong to, there's usually about 20 to 25 people in the book club. And 95% of the members of the book club are women. And there's me, the single guy in there. And it's just so funny, but it develops a different muscle because I'm aware that most of the readers are women. Okay.
Yeah.
So especially in the kind of stuff that I'm writing. And so I'm like, okay, what do women readers want to read? And for the occasional males who find themselves stuck in the book club, I want to know what turns them on. So I'm always trying to learn. I'm fascinated, and I think one of the things that I think is different about me that I've noticed over time is that I'm not really a group or organization person. Okay. I can have specific beliefs, hey, I'm a Catholic, all right. But do I have criticism for the Catholic Church? Oh, yeah, I got a lot. But I really love individuals. Like, so I always joke that it seems like any group that I join will eventually kick me out because I will disagree with something. But I just freaking love people themselves. I find people so interesting. And I was talking to a young writer recently, and he said, Kent, I've got this problem because my girlfriend takes me out to social events, and I want to talk about the big ideas with people. And sometimes it's hard to get to run across people who want to talk about the big issues. And I was like, well, okay, here's the deal. Everybody is an expert in themselves. And so I said, how about, this particular writer is working in the criminal justice system. So he's like, the big issues about, like, why do we prosecute these people and not these people? I'm like, okay, yeah, that's good. That's a big discussion. But, ask a person why they have that job and what was the path that led them to that job. And, why do they eat this food and not that food? And I said, you can take anything that seems superficial and you can find something deeper underneath it. And I said, you like to get to the deep stuff about, like, why do you do this job? Do you like this job? Do you not like this job? What job would you like to have? And I said, that's a little bit different than, hitting somebody with, hey, why do you think that we have such high incarceration rates? Well, the average person might not really want to go there or feel like they're competent to go there. But
Right.
you ask them about their own lives. Do you have kids? What's your family situation like? Where are you from? Oh, and so I said, and I think it was kind of interesting because this young writer may have had the view that, gee, I've published all these books. I bet you go everywhere and talk all the time. And I'm like, no, actually not. I'm actually getting other people to talk because, I'm interested in other people. And I learned so much, I'm always questioning people like, oh, where are you from? What was your childhood like? And do you like your job? And what's good about your job? What don't you like about your job? Because, those are things that, and I think the reason people read books is they want a connection with another brain. And you can have that connection with another brain by just talking to people. Yes. And, asking them questions about things that, they're willing to open up about, and use that as sort of the guide. And, when you realize, we're all like that, we all, have our problems and our issues and our strengths. It's kind of easy to connect with human beings if you just say, oh, that human being is probably like me, and I'm going to find a lot of areas of similarity between them. And, one of the things that, getting to be a little bit of an older guy, I am aware that men so often don't have many friends and don't have many social contacts. Well, I'm very aware that with women, it's like, woman meets another woman and they seem to get along. It's like, hey, let's go out to lunch. And, guys don't go out to lunch. They don't get together for coffee. They like projects. And so you can find things to do. But
maybe they can have a do it yourself or build something project, like,
Yeah, and
build a shed, put together something.
But it's also, I think one of the things that maybe was exacerbated by COVID is this social isolation. And so, what I'm trying to do in my life is, really to maximize all the social interactions I might have. Like, for example, so I've got my new office here. So I've been here about 6 weeks, so I'm going around to the neighborhood, I walk into the smoke shop and, I talk to Bashir, and I'm like, oh, he introduces himself, and I say, hey, I'm new to the neighborhood. And so I asked Bashir about how he started his smoke shop. I don't smoke, but does he have other stuff in it? Does he sell drinks? Does he sell, I'm a big beef jerky guy. Does he ever have beef jerky? And Bashir and I get into like a 20-minute conversation. And I think that's just open to people. And it's something that we've fallen out of the practice of doing it. And I think that is not good for our health, that we should just be curious about people and open.
I think that if we give people the opportunity to just have a conversation, you will find that every person that you ever meet, they are walking around with a story that is so powerful. It is life-changing, and someone can benefit from that. So I believe that if we start that old tradition of walking and stopping to talk to people, that we will find that every person we meet has a story that can change someone else's life, whether it's about tragedy or it's something about their experience. It's just something that I think we have lost because we are so we're so open or so far gone when it comes to social media, where you don't have to meet people and talk to them. You think you know their story from watching what they post. And so we have lost the art of listening to people's story and seeing the power and the magnitude of how impactful their experiences can be.
Yeah, and when I was teaching, I recently retired from teaching, but one of the essays that I'd always give my students was about something called the Roseto miracle. Now, Roseto is a small town in Pennsylvania, and in the 1950s, researchers were fascinated by it because it had incredibly low levels of heart disease, when heart disease had become like the number one killer of men in America. And they're like, well, we go to this small town and none of the men are dying of heart disease. They're dying of old age. And so they realized, they looked at all these sorts of things. Oh, was it the food they were eating? Was it the genetics? And what they found is that the town had been settled by Southern Italians. And so my mom was full-blooded Sicilian. So, I kind of come from that culture. And what they found is, even though there were only 3,000 people in the town, there were 125 service organizations. And so people, in this kind of stovepiping society that we have, which is like, oh, do you believe what I believe? If you do, I'll talk to you. If not,
And if you
I'm
don't,
not going to talk. No, it's like, I'm sorry. There ain't enough room in the world for you to only talk to people you like and agree with on everything. And, and so the Southern Italian culture is very welcoming, very warm. Hey, come on in, sit down, have something to eat. Let's talk. Let's drink some wine. Okay, let's shoot the breeze. And so I think that is something I bring to my writing, which is like, I want to bring everybody in. Come on in. Sit down at the table, have something to eat. Got a question? You got something you want to say it. I always loved the movie Crocodile Dundee, where, the Australian outback guy is talking to this New York socialite woman, a New York career woman. And so she's talking about like her therapist and everything. And she goes, do you go to therapy? How do you deal with things, when they bother you? And he goes, well, I go to the bar and I tell the bartender my problems, and then he tells everybody else and the problem gets solved. And she's like horrified by this, which is like, no, let's just talk about frickin' things and let's not hide things. And if we talk about them, hey, we're probably going to figure out a solution. So why do we not have the faith that if we speak honestly, we can solve the problems?
Wow, I love it. And behind every quiet person in every room, or behind every person in a room, there is a story that needs to come through. And so if that is your barber, or the rum bar,
Yeah,
it is that, if that's your hairstylist, if that's the person that has the time to listen, maybe it's the Uber driver.
yeah,
Your story is still important to get out. It is as important for you to get out as it is for someone to hear it, because it's moving mountains. It can move mountains for the person that's listening. That just may be the thing that they need to hear, but it also shifts something inside of you once you've unloaded that.
yeah, yeah. And hearing somebody's story connects you to them.
Yes.
And they feel it. And when you give a person your attention and they feel heard, you can just feel that gratitude from them, and that
Yes.
connects you to them.
Where can we find your book?
So you can find my books on Amazon or wherever books are sold. You can also check out my website, kentheckenlivelybooks.com. And I'm doing a 6-day-a-week podcast called Twice as Lively with Kent Heckenlively, which is on YouTube and X.
Oh, wow. So you heard it. And where, if someone wanted to be a part of your community and to join your book club, or you don't have a book club, you're in 2 book clubs.
Yes.
Okay. So what if you wanted to come
I
join
would
your
think the
book club?
best way to follow me is to follow my
Okay.
YouTube channel
Uh-huh.
and make comments there, and I'll probably respond to your comments.
Beautiful. Now, before we go, I really have some questions that I like to ask everyone. They're not hard questions. And in this way, I ask these questions because you have so much to offer, and we have so much to learn from an author that sometimes just hearing a bold statement or something that you can give to the audience that can carry them through is left behind if I don't ask these questions. So
Sure.
What's a bold promise that you can share with the audience?
A bold promise is, if you read one of my books, you will learn something. You will come to a different appreciation, and it's fun to know things.
Awesome. And what's a bold statement that may cause a paradigm shift that you can share with the audience today?
The real problem in America today isn't between the right and the left. It's between those who understand that we, the people, are being poorly served by our system, which is unresponsive to the genuine claims of the right or the left.
Yes. I agree with you 100%. And with that said, knowing that, given all of that, what do you plan to do in the future? What bold moves are you planning to make in the future?
To keep writing books. As I mentioned, I recently retired from teaching, so that gives me the time to do a daily podcast. So I'm building my show, building my community, and I'm just going to keep causing trouble and having fun.
Thank you so much for coming. We talked a lot about expressing ourselves and getting that 1 million word out so that you can become an amazing author or a writer. And one of the things that I find that is super helpful for those of you who are listening is blogging. Just start writing. Don't use artificial intelligence to blog for you. You can use it to help you to make edits and give you some ideas, but I want you to get in the habit of writing and just pouring things out on the paper. And then there's another thing that Ken said that I would like for you to hone in on. He has a few accountability groups. Those 2 reading groups that he's in, they kind of keep you accountable to read,
Yeah.
So join a reading group. If you need help, we have a writing group that meets every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we meet on Zoom. So we help you with the process of writing your book, but we also have a community that is reading. And if you want to be an excellent writer, you have to read. So thank you for listening, and thank you. Oh my goodness, Kent. I cannot believe if anyone who started this conversation thinking that, you knew what kind of author Kent Heckenlively was, I am willing to bet you are leaving today with a completely different picture. This Never Happened is the kind of book that entertains you relentlessly. And on the surface, while you are genuinely uncomfortable about some of the questions underneath, there's such a combination of provocativeness and genuine inquisitiveness that I think is an amazing combination, and it's rare and worth your time for as a reader. So thank you for listening, and thank you for for supporting Kent. I really wish that every person listening goes out and get the book. We're not just here to talk about the beauty of writing and the beauty of the characters. We're here to support each other. This is an ecosystem for authors. So you can come up here and talk about your projects, but we're also here to listen and go out and buy these books. So please support Kent Heckenlively and purchase this book. This never happened. And Kent, I just want to say a special thank you, a million thank yous for coming up here and sharing your book. Please just share one more time. Where can the audience pick up your book?
So, This Never Happened, A Call Girl in DC can be found on Amazon and wherever books are sold. And probably within about a month, the audio version will be out.
This was a genuinely surprising and thoroughly entertaining conversation. I thank you so much for being the kind of writer who refuses to stay in one lane. Thank you for joining me at the Bold Book of the Day.
Thanks so much, Denise.
For anyone who's listening, if you're interested in joining the Writing Incubator Challenge, please send an email to info@boldpublishings.com. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for the Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a central hub and a safe space for authors to share their stories. Follow Dr. Denise on Facebook and Instagram at Denise Nicholson, or go to denisenicholson.com. Remember, no one can share your story better than you.